Chris DeWolfe. I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself, tell the audience where did you get your start in games, what did you do before, how did you end up where you are right now?
Yeah, so this is my fourth startup, which isn't really a startup anymore. What really motivates me personally is making consumer products and digital consumer products at scale. And so probably what I was best known for before what I'm doing right now is I was the co-founder and CEO of MySpace, where we built the largest traffic site in the United States and pretty much the original social network. What got me really interested in gaming was a couple different things. During the time, we had a joint venture in Japan with Masayoshi-san and SoftBank, and every time I go over there, they would take us to either a gaming company, a social networking company, and the first thing we'd spend a lot of time with all the folks there, and we'd ask them about devices and what they did on their devices. And over 60% of all the users at the time were accessing their social networks through mobile devices there. And it was the same with gaming through all the carriers that we met with. So that was sort of the first time that a light went on in my mind that all the stuff that we were doing on PCs or Apples, whatever you want to call it, at that point would be done at some point in the future on mobile because the connection times there were 7 or 8 times faster. The other thing was that at the time I was running MySpace, Zynga had we had a big platform, and Zynga was a big gaming company, social gaming company, and without really any kind of a quality game, they were doing over $100,000 in revenue a day, and we weren't taking the platform that seriously. So it was clear to me that there was a lot of pent-up demand, especially for casual gamers, social gamers, those gamers that weren't hardcore, those gamers that had been underserved in the past. So when I decided to leave MySpace, it was a decision between music, which there's negative margins, or video, which YouTube kind of already existed, to gaming, which for me was just blue ocean everywhere, from both the social side, which I was very familiar with, that translated well into gaming, as well as mobile. And then jumped from there with a few people, had a startup with 5 people. Now we have 700 people and offices in 7 different countries.
And you, I tell this story a lot. I remember when you made the pivot from social games, kind of Facebook-based kind of games to mobile. But what made you do that? How did you recognize that you actually could thrive at that? And then tell me how that's changed over the last few years since you started.
Yeah, so I think looking back, it was, again, kept going back to that moment in Japan where everyone was doing everything on mobile, and also looking at the content that people had developed here for mobile, especially for more casual mobile games and for more of a female demographic, and there just wasn't much out there. And so what we did is we spent a lot of time creating technology that would make it very easy for us to make a game once, whether it was for the PC, and then easily be able to convert that to mobile. And so once we had the technology that did that, then it was sort of a company mandate that everything we did would be multi-platform. And so back then, even going back to 5 years ago, I would say that, especially on the casual side, it was really a pick up and play experience, and all of our experiences were built more for new gamers. But then you fast forward 5 to 7 years in the future, and you're looking at a very different industry where all of the users are off their training wheels and expecting a much more complex experience. A lot of other differences. I think everything was very California and Western Europe centric from a game developer perspective back then. And I think now we're seeing games that are hitting the top grossing charts from everywhere in Eastern Europe, Russia, China, everywhere's caught up to anything that we're doing in California. So lots and lots of competition. User acquisition costs have gone up. So the business is getting tougher, but it's getting more and more fun as well because we're able to make the games more complex.
And how have you addressed competition, especially for development talent? And if you can incorporate in the answer, just how do you build a live services organization? What kind of people do you look for? What exactly has allowed you to thrive?
Right. So kind of how we look at our business, we want to build a big business. If you want to build a small business, that's like totally cool too. But we just set out to build a large business with a big portfolio of games. And from my perspective, the really good companies that are doing that and our strategy in doing that is, A, you have a core portfolio of games, and you need to make sure that your revenue is either flat to always increasing from that core portfolio of games. And so it sounds like a pretty obvious thing that everyone wants to do, but you make a conscious effort to do that through live game operations or live game services, whatever you want to call it. And essentially what that means to us is always introducing new content to users on a daily or weekly basis, new events, whether it's a collection event, a winning streak event, whatever it may be, something new to get your users always in the game and retained, and it also increases monetization. So you want a steady state of paying daily active users in your core games. And then when you're thinking about live game operations, you also have to think about other things like, okay, when are we going to have our sales? And how much are those sales going to be discounted? And I remember specifically in the early day, say, this is the greatest thing in the world. You can have sales every day like they used to at Macy's and make a bunch of extra dough. You see your revenue triple. But what we weren't doing then is looking at things like the overall economy. And you can do have as simple as a procedure as looking at the average coin balance of your users and the specific coin balances of your users after you have a sale, and then making sure that you're draining those coin balances out. That's part of live game operations, but it can get quite complex, but if you do it really well, a game can not only last for 1, 2, 5, or 10 years, but we're always hoping to have the next huge franchise and have our brands be around for 50 years to come and create the next monopoly. So that's sort of our first step to making sure that our revenue is sort of even or flat going into the next year. And then we're always having at least have a strategy to have like 3 or 4 new games in development where we take much bigger swings than we used to, because again, there's over 250,000 game developers out there, and if you don't do something really special, you're not going to be able to sort of cut through all the noise that's out there. I'm sure you've all experienced that, and we've at times set the bar for games that we've developed in the past that just wasn't high enough, and you always need to try and take those extra chances and peek around the corner. And I guess the negative side to that is sometimes the games aren't going to work, and you have to be ready to move on from there. Sometimes a lot of times the games are going to be more expensive to make because they take longer to make. And then I guess the third thing is always bring in new creative folks into the company. And right now we're spending a lot of time doing that through M&A, and that's been really helpful for us.
So you've thrived in making casual games and keeping them alive and keeping them growing by being excellent in live ops. What goes into your decision process on new games? I mean, are you sticking to casual? I mean, I know that you have some licensed properties and some other genres, but how do you decide whether to expand, whether to buy, whether to build, and that you'll be good at it?
That's a very loaded question and a very difficult one. And I think if we all got that right every year, we'd be growing by 20, 30% every year. Right now we're taking the approach of half of our games adding to the franchises that we've created, the brands that we've created at Jam City. So like a Cookie Jam, so then we built Cookie Jam Blast, or like a Panda Pop. But we're also licensing third-party brands like Harry Potter. which was released last year, Harry Potter, Hogwarts Mystery, and that went to #1 in 40 countries, fastest game ever for us to get to 100 million in revenue, and is amazing because it's very substitutional for marketing. And we've all experienced the increasing UA costs. I remember when we launched Cookie Jam, CPIs, cost per installs, were between 50 cents and $1. And now for a high quality user, it's probably $6. And I'm sure there's tons of talks today all about that and how Facebook's getting more difficult, Google's getting more difficult. But attaching a really world-class IP to a game that we feel really good about is one way of doing that. And then, yeah, having a good balance with that. And then the other deal that we recently did was a long multi-year deal, multi-title deal with Disney. Frozen 2 is going to be the next game that we come out with them. That's going to be one of those similar global games that we're really excited about. Yeah, so it's a mixture, #1, between IP and our own brands, and then also game genres. And we've gotten really good at 2 of them, which are the puzzle genre, and then the second one I would say is storytelling. All of the writing and all of the animation and art, we did ourselves at Jam City for Harry Potter, which we believe we have the best writers in the world, not just for games, but for any kind of medium. So big core competency in that, as well as puzzle. And then if we want to get into other genres, we're going to do that through acquisitions or partnerships.
And what do you think the optimal mix of core, new games in development and M&A is? I mean, do you want to be a third, and a third?
I think it depends really what's in our pipeline. And, part of that depends on, A, how big the game is, B, if any of the games carried over from the year before, and then C, if we see a particular genre that we feel has a lot of blue ocean in front of it or that is underserved in some way. So more recently, we have gotten into what we call loosely parlor games. So we bought a company called Bingo Pop out of Toronto, and then a company called 231 Games out of Berlin, which is more in the card genre. And so we wouldn't have gotten into either of those 2 genres on our own, and it was they were both spaces that we wanted to get into. So part of it's just what's available and what looks interesting.
And just personal anecdote, I'm absolutely addicted to a game called Empires and Puzzles that Zynga just bought for $700 million, and Chris had a look at it for $20 million. And so, and actually wanted to buy it. So I mean, not that he.
This guy right down here.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the most angry.
But I'm probably $1,000 into this game, and I'm not even close to being done spending money. So the M&A opportunities are interesting, but again, getting far more expensive.
I think it also shows you too that you can start a hit game right now. Like a lot of people are saying, you have to be big in order to be successful. And I think if you want to be part of something bigger, that's totally cool. But if you want to stay smaller and grow, you can do that. Empires and Puzzles is a great example. I'm not sure what the revenue is when they sold. You probably know, but well over $100 million.
Yeah, it was 200 when they announced the deal December 26th, and then they proceeded to absolutely crush the next quarter. So they haven't crushed because they raised guidance enough to. It's probably doing 250 on the way to 300, and you could have had it for 20.
So it's
25. You were too cheap.
So it's awesome. So here's a company that really didn't exist 3 years ago. That was doing $250 million, or is doing $250 million right now, and essentially did it on their own. So anyone can do it. It's just a little bit harder, I think, doing it on your own, and takes a little bit more luck.
Anyone can sing too, but somehow people won't pay us to do it. I don't know how many of you work in the mobile games business, but a $100 million game is a big deal. And just to put that in perspective, EA's done it twice. And they've been in the mobile games business since 2002. So, and one of them was Star Wars. So brands. How do you know, that a brand's going to work? Because there's probably been 10 WWE mobile games and none of them have been big. And Zynga keeps doing Willy Wonka this and that and it doesn't work, or Wizard of Oz something or other. And how do you know? And how do you create a story around Frozen 2 that's compelling and makes people want to come back?
Yeah, so we look at
it's a secret. I mean, if it's not out yet, don't tell us.
No, we look at a lot of different factors or variables when we decide to go into partnership with a company that owns a brand. One of them is certainly, do we share a similar vision with the brand owner in terms of where the game's going? So we'll go in there and we'll give them our vision for what the game's going to be. And if they love it, then we move on to the next step. So part of it's going to be like, what's the royalty? Can we reasonably make money on this game? 3, is it like, how saturated is it in the marketplace? Are there 20 different other mobile games using the same brand where it'll get mistaken in the marketplace? That's not good. 4, is it truly a global brand? And there's very few of those. So that's why Harry Potter was so huge. It literally went to #1 in 40 countries. And because everyone knows and loves this brand in 40 countries, and there's very few brands like that. Frozen is another one. There's only one other Frozen mobile game out there. So we're particularly excited about those. And we were, and then I think probably most importantly, you need champions within your organization that love the brand as much as the original creator of the brand and understand the characters and character development so they can write those beautiful and fun stories, because almost any good mobile game out there right now has a narrative and characters associated with it. And so, yeah, there's at least 5 or 6 variables that we look at that give us a lot of confidence before we even begin building a game.
Biggest opportunity, and asked a different way, where do you see your company in 10 years?
So we're trying to build brands. We are building brands. We have tens of millions of people playing our games all the time. Mobile is obviously super interesting, and it's why we're all here in this room. 80% of all revenue in the App Store is coming from mobile games. We feel that it's the next wave of mobile entertainment is mobile games. It's the future of entertainment. We love having our headquarters in Los Angeles because Los Angeles has a heritage of storytelling. We also love having amazing developers in other countries, so we're going to continue to build out our corporate headquarters in LA with central services. We believe that, you asked me also going back to the previous question, we have a consumer insights team that does a lot of brand studies, focus groups, surveys about a brand and how it'll work with a particular game mechanic. And so we'll have consumer insights. We have a big data science team that's working on things like customized gameplay to the individual user, helping out our UA team to make sure that all of our media buys are streamlined, a publishing team that interfaces with Apple and Google, and then you get the basic stuff like accounting, and like all of those individual functions are very scalable over many, many games. And so kind of what I see our company doing is looking for the best and brightest game developers or most interesting geographic regions out there and building studios throughout the world and leveraging our corporate infrastructure and corporate services to make all of those games better.
Last question, because we'll be out of time. Biggest regret or biggest error that you learned from?
There's this thing that this guy, Reid Hoffman, calls blitz scaling, and it's when like everything is really going well, like don't worry about the P&L, just put your pedal to the metal and go. And I think with some of our early puzzle games, we would have spent 5 times the amount of money we spent in marketing. We're still doing very well with those games, and they're continuing, many of them, to hit all-time highs many, many years later. But I think we could have taken all the air out of the puzzle space if we had gone even bigger back then. But I don't know if that's the biggest regret. That's one that just sort of...
Missed opportunity.
Yeah, it was a big opportunity to just think about quite a bit. And helps me to think about our business moving forward when there are opportunities to move very quickly, which is why I think we're getting so aggressive in M&A and partnerships right now, and that we feel that we can strike those partnerships, and we feel that we're quite good at it.
We're past our allotted time. Thank you guys for listening to it. Thank you, Chris.